Good morning. So today I'm going to talk to you about caveman rule number 3. We've done 1 and 2, so let's talk about number 3. Caveman rule number 3 is if you are not part of a pack, then you are going to die. So, like the other ones, everything results in death because that's the way your subconscious kind of works. So what's this about? Well, in the caveman days, if you would not be able to survive if you were on your own. Think of if you've ever read Clan of the Cave Bear. You know that? Yeah, well, kind of interesting. I read that when I was about 13, and if you look back on it now, that'll surprise you. But anyway, so you could not survive on your own. You needed to be part of a pack. And so we have a kind of programming in our brains that means that we need to fit into the pack. And part of fitting into the pack is attaching yourself to the strongest person who gives you the best chance of survival and getting rid of the weakest people who will bring the pack down. This is not a conscious, rational thing. Like we've talked about with the other caveman rules, it comes down to your subconscious. But what happens is all through childhood, your brain is learning lessons about what to do when you need to fit into the pack. It's learning lessons from growing up that it can use to keep you safe once you're an adult. Now, the tricky thing about this, like any of the caveman rules, is fitting into the pack or not fitting into the pack does not equal death anymore, but your subconscious doesn't know any different. So, you're at school and somebody's picking on you, because that happens at school a lot, because every school has the same dynamics. Every classroom has the same dynamics. You have the head honcho kid who holds court and dictates how things go and picks on other people. But if you think about it with a head honcho kid, in order to know what to pick on other people for, they have to have the thought in their head in the first place. And there's a number of different things that they could think of. That kid is the most screwed up kid in the class. We all have a subconscious in charge 90% of the time. We are all screwed up. But the head honcho kid is the one that for whatever reason they can't be the head honcho at home, so they do it at school, and the way they get the kicks is to put other people down because it makes them feel better. That's a shame that they have to do that. The head honcho kid will have the henchmen, the people who hang around them, A, because they don't want to be picked on themselves, and B, because it's good to hang out with the strongest person as your brain perceives it. And then there's everybody else. You usually have the geeks, the quiet ones, swats, all those different kind of combinations going on. Now let's imagine you're in the school playground and somebody calls you a specky four eyes. It's not a big deal. It's not a particularly imaginative insult. But your subconscious goes, oh my gosh, I have just been identified as the weakest in the pack. And that's a problem, because the weakest in the pack is going to die. And it's not going to let you die. So it has to learn something that it can use to stop you dying. How do you learn something when you're the weakest in the pack and there's nothing you can do about it? So the only way it can keep you safe is to keep you away from the pack, to help you realise that you are, if they spot that you're the weakest, then you've got a problem. So the best way to save you from being spotted as the weakest is to not hang around anybody else. And then you spend your whole life feeling like you don't fit in, feeling like you're different, like you're not good enough, that everybody's better than you. Because your subconscious says, don't do that, don't go near them, because they'll spot there's something wrong with you, and you don't want them to spot that, because if they spot that, you'll die. You become the person that sits in any social gathering, watching people, kind of, a big part of you wants to join in, but you don't dare do it because you don't feel good enough. But it's not true. You don't need to fit in to survive anymore. So it's a basic miscalculation. It's not true that you're the weakest. None of this stuff is true, but your brain thinks it is, and it drives behaviour. And you know the weird thing is, if you put 10 people in a room, every single one of them is worried what everybody thinks about them. And not a single one of them can read minds. It's an infinite loop. So the problem with this rule is it makes you feel that you're not good enough, but there's no basis for it whatsoever. So like with any of the rules, we just have to find the point at which the calculation was made and get rid of that rule from the rule book. And if you get rid of the rule from the rule book, eventually you can learn that you're okay being just who you are. So that's caveman rule number 3. If you're not part of a pack, then you're going to die.